The files hit the floor before she could stop them. And the entire hallway, 37 employees who had survived 3 years under Kang Si-jun, stopped breathing. Because the one man who had never, not once, shown mercy to anyone, was looking at the intern on her knees like he was seeing something he'd buried a long time ago. Everyone in Kang Industries knew one rule above all others. Do not cross Kang Si-jun's path. Not his hallway. Not his elevator. Not his shadow. Precious Mensa had been in the building for 11 minutes. She didn't know it yet. But her life had just changed forever. Welcome to Afro-K romance fairy tale. On today's episode you get a dose of betrayal, power, romance, love, unexpected encounters and beautiful beginnings. If this is your first time here, make sure to like, subscribe, click the notification icon to get a reminder when new amazing stories drop, and send this story to friends and family who you think would love to watch it. And also tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I'd really love to know. Now let's dive back into this amazing story. Precious's hands were still shaking as she gathered the last file from the floor. She could feel 37 pairs of eyes on her back. She could feel something else too, something heavier, closer. She looked up. Kang Si-jun had not moved. Most men in his position would have stepped over her and kept walking. That's what she had expected. That's what everyone in that hallway had expected. Instead he stood there, completely still, watching her with an expression that had no name. Not anger, not amusement, not irritation. Something else entirely. Something that made the air feel thin. He reached down. Picked up one file that had slid against his shoe. Held it out. She took it with both hands, barely breathing. He straightened up, adjusted his cuff, and walked away. Not a single word. The hallway exhaled like a punctured tire. Then Minji appeared from nowhere, grabbed Precious by the elbow, and pulled her sideways into an empty corridor. "Do you have any idea?" she started, then stopped, looked both ways, and lowered her voice to almost nothing. "That was Kang Si-jun." "I gathered that," Precious whispered. "No." Minji's eyes were wide. "You don't understand. 3 months ago, a senior manager spilled water near him. Near him. Not on him. The man was transferred to our Busan branch the same afternoon. His office was empty before lunch." She stared at Precious. "And Si-jun just handed you a file." Precious looked down at the file in her hands. Her heart was doing something complicated. Maybe he was just being decent. Minji blinked at her like she had said something in a language that didn't exist. Then she grabbed the files, stacked them properly, and shoved them back into Precious's arms. "Deliver these. Say nothing to anyone. And pray he forgets your face." But something told Precious, the way a storm tells you before the first drop falls, that forgetting was not what was about to happen. She delivered the files. She survived the rest of the day. She went home to her small rented apartment, called her mother, listened to her voice, and felt the familiar weight of every reason she could not afford to fail at this. The next morning she came back. And the morning after that. By the 3rd day, she had almost convinced herself the hallway moment was nothing. Strange blip. A man having an off day. Then the call came. Minji delivered the news with the energy of someone reading a verdict. "The CEO's office has requested you for a documentation project on the 35th floor. Pause. Precious. They used your full name." The elevator ride to the 35th floor was the longest 30 seconds of her life. The doors opened to a different world. Quieter, darker wood, thicker carpet, the kind of silence that felt intentional. A woman at the front desk pointed her to a side office connected to the main one by a glass partition. She could see him through the glass before she even sat down. Si-jun was on a call, standing at the window, the city spread out behind him like something he owned. He was speaking Korean, low and precise, and even without understanding the words, something in the tone made the room feel smaller. He didn't look at her when she entered. Just gestured to the desk in the corner with 2 fingers, eyes still on the skyline. She sat. She opened the files. She worked. The silence between them was strange, not uncomfortable, but loaded like a sentence with the last word missing. She kept her eyes down. professional, focused. She was here to work, she reminded herself. That was all. Then his call ended. The quiet shifted. You didn't scream. His voice was low, unhurried. She looked up slowly. He was still at the window, but turned now, watching her with that same unreadable expression from the hallway. Sorry, she said. When you bumped into me. Everyone else in that situation, they panic. They cry sometimes. His eyes moved across her face like he was reading something. You just picked up the files. She held his gaze carefully. I couldn't afford to make it worse. Something moved in his expression. Just slightly. Just enough. He looked at her for one more beat. The kind of look that asks a question it isn't ready to say out loud, then turned back to his desk. You're reassigned to this floor, he said. For the remainder of your internship. She opened her mouth, closed it, nodded once. She should have felt relieved. A better assignment, closer access, stronger recommendation at the end. All the things she came here for. Instead, she felt the first quiet pull of something she had no category for yet. And across the open floor, through the glass, a woman stood very still with a coffee cup halfway to her lips, watching the new intern walk out of Si-jun's office. Jian's eyes were patient, calculating. The kind of patient that meant she had already started planning. The 35th floor had its own weather system. Pressure shifts, cold fronts, the occasional strike of lightning depending on what kind of morning Si-jun was having. Precious learned to read it quickly. She learned which silences meant leave him alone, and which ones meant he was waiting for someone to be brave enough to speak. She was usually the only one brave enough. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because she had not come this far, had not left her mother, crossed an ocean, swallowed her pride through every underpaid, overlooked moment, to shrink in a corner because a powerful man had a cold face. One evening the office emptied early. Some internal event on a lower floor. Precious stayed behind. A report was due and she never missed deadlines. Si-jun stayed too, for reasons that were his own. He came out of his office around 9. For her. Said nothing. Disappeared back inside. And then reappeared 2 minutes later and set a cup of coffee on the edge of her desk without a word, without eye contact, and went back to his chair. She stared at the cup for a full 3 seconds. Then she picked it up, took a sip and went back to work. And she didn't make a thing of it. Didn't thank him loudly or look over at him with meaning. She just drank the coffee. And through the glass partition, Kang Si-jun looked up from his documents and watched her. This woman who took a cup of coffee from him like it was the simplest, most natural thing in the world. Like he was just a person. Not a title. Not a threat. Just a person. He looked back down. But it took him longer than it should have. It was a Wednesday when everything cracked open. Precious was cross-referencing contracts when she heard it. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just 2 voices in the corridor outside, low and rushed. The kind of conversation people have when they think nobody is close enough to matter. The Busan agreement needs to move before Friday. A voice she didn't recognize. If the CO group finds out Si-jun is stalling. He's not stalling. That was Director Yoon. Clip. Final. He's restructuring. There's a difference. The difference stops mattering when bodies start showing up. Silence. Then footsteps. Then nothing. Precious sat very still, eyes on the contract in front of her, reading the same line 4 times without absorbing a single word. Bodies. The CO group. A Friday deadline that had nothing to do with quarterly reports. She had known, the way you always know things you don't want to know, that Kong Industries was not entirely what it presented to the world. But knowing something in the abstract is very different from hearing it spoken out loud 3 feet from where you're sitting. She closed the file. Opened it again. Made herself breathe. This was not her business. She was an intern. She had a report due. She had a mother at home waiting for a wire transfer at the end of the month. She could not afford curiosity. She could not afford involvement. She could not afford anything that cost more than she had. She finished the report. Filed it. Went home. and lay awake until 3 in the morning thinking about a man who gave her coffee without explanation and looked at her like she was a problem he hadn't prepared for. The next morning, Jian was waiting for her at the elevator. Not obviously, not aggressively. She was just there, perfectly dressed, coffee in hand, with the relaxed confidence of a woman who had never once been caught off guard by anything in her life. She smiled when she saw Precious, and the smile was so practiced it was almost admirable. "You're the new intern everyone's talking about," she said lightly. "I didn't know anyone was talking about me," Precious replied. "Oh, they are." Jian tilted her head, studied her with open curiosity that felt more like inventory. "You must be doing something right. Si-jun doesn't keep people close. He keeps them useful. There's a difference." She paused, letting that land. "Just make sure you know which one you are." The elevator arrived. Jian stepped in first. Precious followed. They rode 6 floors in silence. And when Jian stepped out on the executive level without looking back, Precious stood very still and felt the shape of a warning she hadn't fully received yet. She should have left it there. She almost did. But that evening, Si-jun called her into his office. Not for a document, not for a file. He was sitting on the edge of his desk when she came in, jacket off for the first time she had ever seen, sleeves rolled to the elbow, and there was something almost disarming about it. The armor slightly loosened. "Sit," he said. She sat. He looked at her for a moment like he was deciding something. Then, "How much do you actually know about this company?" The question landed strange. She kept her face neutral. "Enough to do my job well." "That's not what I asked." The room was very quiet. She could hear her own heartbeat making poor decisions. "I know it's powerful," she said carefully. "I know people are afraid of you. I know there are parts of this building I'm probably not supposed to think about too hard." He watched her. "And yet you're still here. I told you. I can't afford not to be." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, moved to the window. That window, the city again, the skyline he carried like a second skin, and when he spoke, his voice had dropped to something lower. Almost private. "The CO group has been watching this company for 2 years. They want something that belongs to me, and they have decided that the cleanest way to get it," he paused, "is through the people around me." Precious felt the floor shift slightly beneath her. "Why are you telling me this?" He turned, and the look on his face was the most unguarded she had ever seen it. Not soft, not warm, but honest in a way that felt almost painful, like a window opened in a room that had been sealed for years. "Because you overheard Yoon in the corridor yesterday," he said quietly. "And because I need to know if you're going to be a problem." The air left the room. She stared at him. He stared back. And in the space between them was everything neither of them was saying. That this conversation had already crossed a line, that he had already decided something about her before she walked through that door, and that the word problem in his mouth did not sound entirely like a threat. "I'm not a problem," she said. "I'm an intern who needs this job and wants to go home at the end of it." "Good." He turned back to the window. "Then stay in your lane. Don't repeat what you heard. And, the briefest pause, so brief she almost missed it, don't walk home alone this week." She stood slowly. "Is that an order?" He didn't turn around. "It's a suggestion. From someone who doesn't usually make them." She left the office with her pulse doing something completely unprofessional. In the hallway she stopped, pressed her back against the wall beside his door, and closed her eyes for exactly 4 seconds. Then she straightened up and walked to the elevator like a woman who had everything under control. She had nothing under control. If there had been any version of this where she kept her feelings filed neatly under irrelevant, it ended on a Thursday night 2 weeks later. She was leaving late, again, when she found the envelope on her desk. No name on the front. Inside, a single card, expensive paper, 2 lines of print. "There is a car waiting for you downstairs. Use it, eh?" She looked around the empty floor. Looked at the card again. Looked at the elevator. He took the car. The driver said nothing. Took her exactly to her apartment building. Waited until she was inside the front door before pulling away. She stood in her small hallway, coat still on, and thought about a man who arranged cars anonymously and signed with a single letter like the rest of his name was too much to give. She thought about the way he said suggestion like it cost him something. She thought about Jian's eyes in the elevator. Just make sure you know which one you are. And then her phone buzzed. A message from a number she didn't have saved. You left a file on your desk. It has tomorrow's figures. Lock it away before you sleep. She replied before she could stop herself. How do you have this number? 3 minutes of nothing. Thorough. She stared at the screen. Deleted. Typed again. Good night, Si-jun. She watched the delivered receipt sit there, unanswered, for a long time. Then, just before midnight. Good night, precious. She put her phone face down on the nightstand, pressed both hands over her face, and felt something bloom in her chest that she had absolutely no business feeling for a man who was almost certainly dangerous, definitely complicated, and standing at the center of something much larger and darker than a documentation project. She felt it anyway. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known lying there in the dark with her heart full of something new and terrifying, was that across the city, in a building with no signage and no public address, 2 men were sitting across a table from a photograph. Her photograph. She's close to him, the first man said. The second man, older, with the kind of stillness that comes from having made many irreversible decisions, looked at the photograph for a long moment. Then she's useful, he said simply. Find out how useful. The following Monday arrived with the particular cruelty of Mondays that know too much. Precious stepped off the elevator onto the 35th floor and felt it immediately. A shift in the air, the way pressure drops before something breaks. 3 people she passed in the corridor didn't make eye contact. Minji, who was never on this floor, was standing near the printer with a look on her face that belonged in a hospital waiting room. What happened? Precious asked quietly. Minji pulled her sideways. One of the junior analysts from the 4th floor. He was walking to his car last night and... She stopped. Followed. He's in the hospital. They say it was a robbery. Everyone knows it wasn't a robbery. Precious felt something cold move through her slowly. Who was he? Nobody important. That's the point. Minji's voice dropped further. He was nobody important and they still... She cut herself off again, looked at the floor. Precious, please. Request a transfer back downstairs. Whatever is happening up here, you don't want to be inside it. Precious said nothing. Because what she was thinking she couldn't say out loud, that she had already been warned. That a man who didn't make suggestions had made one. That somehow she had already crossed from the outside of something to the inside of it without ever choosing the moment it happened. She went to her desk, opened her laptop, and found a single document already pulled up on her screen, one she had not opened. It was a company org chart, heavily redacted. But someone had circled 3 names in red and left a sticky note that said only, "Don't trust these." She looked around the floor slowly. Nobody was watching her. Nobody was near her desk. She photographed the note with her phone, closed the document, and sat with her hands folded in her lap, breathing steadily, the way her mother had always taught her. When the water rises, don't splash. Be still. Still things float. She was still. But her mind was moving very fast. She didn't go to Si-jun. That was the decision she made. She was not going to walk into his office with a sticky note and a racing pulse and confirm whatever it was he was starting to think about her. She was not going to be the woman who needed saving. She didn't have the luxury of that story. What she did instead was work. Methodically, precisely, and with her eyes open wider than they had ever been. By Wednesday she had noticed 2 things. First, one of the 3 circled names on that org chart had been in 3 separate meetings with Director Yoon that week. All unscheduled, all brief, all held in the small conference room with the frosted glass. Second, Jian had a habit of arriving on the 35th floor at times that had nothing to do with her listed schedule, and every single time, she positioned herself somewhere with a clean sightline to Si-jun's office. She wasn't watching Si-jun. She was watching who went in and out of his office. She was watching Precious. It was Si-jun who came to her this time. Thursday afternoon. The floor was alive with activity. Phones, keyboards, the low, urgent hum of people moving money and decisions around the world. He appeared at her desk without announcement, which was entirely normal for him, except that he didn't put a file down or ask for a document. He just stood there. "Walk with me," he said. They walked to the far end of the floor, to the narrow balcony that nobody used because the wind-up there was punishing and the door handle was stiff. He pushed it open like it was nothing. She followed. The city spread out below them, indifferent and enormous. The wind hit immediately. She crossed her arms against it. He seemed not to notice it at all. "Someone accessed your workstation Tuesday night," he said, looking at the skyline. "After you left." She kept her voice even. "I know. They left me something." He turned then. Sharp and immediate. "What did they leave?" "An org chart. 3 names circled. A note." The muscle in his jaw moved once. "You didn't come to me." "No," she said simply. "Why?" She looked at him directly. "Because I don't know yet if you're the person I should be running to or the person I should be running from." The wind moved between them. He looked at her with something that was almost hurt. It disappeared so quickly she would have missed it if she hadn't been watching him the way she had learned to watch him. Carefully, quietly, the way you watch something rare that will vanish if you move too fast. "Show me the photograph," he said. She pulled out her phone, handed it to him. He looked at it for a long time. Something in his face went very still, the specific stillness of a man recognizing a shape he has seen before in his nightmares. "Who do you think left it for you?" he asked. "Someone who wanted me to know something," she said. "Or someone who wanted you to think I know something. I haven't decided which." He handed the phone back. His fingers brushed hers in the exchange. Brief, incidental, the kind of contact that means nothing and somehow rearranges everything. Neither of them acknowledged it. Both of them felt it. He turned back to the skyline. "The 3 names on that chart. One of them has been feeding information to the CO group for 8 months. His voice was flat, controlled, but underneath it was something volcanic and contained. "I have known about 2 of them for weeks. The third," he paused. "The third one I trusted." The weight of that last sentence was immense. She didn't fill the silence. She let it sit because some things need room. "I'm sorry," she said finally. Quietly. Not as a formality. Something real. He looked at her sideways. Like the words had landed somewhere unexpected. "You should go back inside," he said. "It's cold." "I'm fine." "Precious." It was the way he said her name. Not a command. Not a formality. Something between a warning and a confession, like her name in his mouth, was a thing he was still getting used to and already couldn't imagine not saying. She went inside. He stayed on the balcony alone for a long time. That evening she was packing up her desk when Jian appeared. No pretense this time. No coffee cup prop, no practice smile. She sat down in the chair across from Precious's desk like she had been invited, crossed her legs, and looked at her with eyes that had made a decision. "He told you about the leak," Jian said. Not a question. Precious said nothing. "He trusts you." Jian's voice was almost wondering. "Do you understand how extraordinary that is? In 3 years I was with him, he never." She stopped. Recalibrated. "I'm not here to threaten you. I want you to understand something. Si-jun is not a man you love safely. Everything around him has a cost. I paid mine." Her eyes were steady, unblinking. "What are you willing to lose? Why do you care?" Precious asked. Jian was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, something human moved across her face. Something that looked almost like guilt. "Because I did something I cannot undo." And watching him finally, she stopped again. Smoothed her jacket. "Just be careful. The people who want to hurt him have already noticed you. And they are not subtle men." Left. Precious sat alone in the emptying office. Jian's words arranging and rearranging themselves in her mind. Something I cannot undo. Not the words of a woman running a scheme. The words of a woman carrying something heavy. Now this is the part where you need to make sure you don't miss a single second of what comes next, because everything is about to shift in a direction nobody sees coming. If you've been enjoying this story so far, now is the perfect time to hit that like button and subscribe to Afro-K Romance Fairy Tale, because the next story dropping on this channel is going to be just as gripping as this one. Don't miss it. She was almost at the elevator when her phone buzzed. Not Si-jun's number. Unknown. One message. Leave the building through the basement. Don't use the main exit tonight. She stood completely still in the middle of the corridor, phone in hand, pulse climbing. Then another message from the same number. I'm not your enemy. Move. She looked at the elevator. Looked at the stairwell door to her left. Made a decision in under 3 seconds that felt like it took years. She pushed through the stairwell door and started moving. What she didn't know, what nobody on the 35th floor knew yet, was that at the main entrance of Kong Industries, 2 men in dark coats had been standing across the street for 40 minutes, watching the lobby, waiting for a specific face to appear through the glass doors. And in the basement parking level, a black car was already running. Director Yoon was in the driver's seat. He had received a call 11 minutes ago. From Si-jun. 4 words only. Get her out. The basement smelled like concrete and engine oil, and the particular kind of quiet that precedes something irreversible. Precious pushed through the heavy stairwell door and stopped dead. The black car. The running engine. Director Yoon stepping out from the driver's side with his hands visible, deliberately, like a man who understood that she had every reason not to trust him. Miss Mensah, he said. We need to move. Where is Si-jun? Her voice was steadier than she felt. He's handling the situation upstairs. Right now my job is you. He opened the back door. Waited. I know you have no reason to get in this car. But I need you to make a fast decision. She looked at the stairwell door behind her. Looked at the car. Thought about 2 men in dark coats she didn't even know were standing outside the main entrance waiting for her face to appear through glass doors. She got in. Yoon pulled out of the basement without headlights for the first 30 seconds. She noticed. Said nothing. Watched the city appear around them in fragments. Streetlights, storefronts, ordinary people on ordinary pavements living ordinary lives that suddenly felt like a different species of existence from whatever she had landed inside. Who sent me that message? She asked. The unknown number. Yoon's eyes moved to the rearview mirror briefly. Someone who has been watching out for you since your 2nd week on the floor. That's not an answer. No, he agreed. It's not. She turned to the window. Her reflection looked back at her, composed on the surface, everything underneath moving too fast to name. She thought about her mother, about the wire transfer due in 4 days, about the 11 minutes she had been in the building before her life apparently decided to become something cinematic and dangerous, and completely outside the plan she had made for herself. Then her phone rang. Jian. She picked up before the 2nd ring. Are you in the car? His voice was tight, controlled. But underneath the control was something raw, something that had been squeezed through a very small opening to reach her. Yes. The exhale on his end was barely audible. Barely. But she heard it. And it undid something in her chest quietly and completely. Good. Don't come back to the building tonight. What's happening up there? Nothing that concerns you. Si-jun. She said his name the way he said hers. Not a command, not a formality. Something that lived in the space between those 2 things. What is happening? Silence. 3 full seconds of it. Then, the 3rd name on that org chart. It wasn't someone from the floor. Another pause, longer, heavier. It was someone who had access to everything. My schedules. My private files. The details of every internal meeting for the past 2 years. She closed her eyes. Already knowing. Not wanting to know. Jian, she said. The silence confirmed it before he did. She didn't leave, he said quietly. She never left. She's been inside this whole time, feeding everything to the CO group. The merger files. The Busan agreement. Everything. His voice dropped to something barely above a murmur. She knew I was getting close to finding the third source. So she moved first. Tonight was supposed to be a distraction. You were supposed to be the distraction. The word landed like a stone dropped in still water. Precious felt the ripples move through her slowly. They were going to use me, she said. Not a question. They were going to take you, he said. And use that to pull me into the open. The city moved past the window. Ordinary and indifferent and beautiful. But you knew, she said. You already knew before tonight. I suspected. Yoon confirmed it 2 hours ago. Beep. I should have moved faster. I should have. He stopped. And in that stop was everything. The sentence he didn't finish was the most honest thing she had ever heard him almost say. I'm fine, she said softly. I'm in the car. I'm fine. Another silence. Different from all the others. This one was not guarded or calculated or controlled. This one was just two people breathing on either end of a phone line, feeling the shape of what they were to each other and not yet having the language for it. I know, he said finally. I know you are. He ended the call. She lowered the phone to her lap and sat with everything that had just happened. The admission underneath the admission, the exhale she had heard that he hadn't intended her to hear, the sentence he hadn't finished that had said more than anything else in weeks of careful, charged, electric almost moments between them. Director Yoon's eyes appeared in the rearview mirror again. If he had heard any of it. His face gave away absolutely nothing. I'm taking you somewhere safe for the night, he said. You'll have everything you need. Tomorrow we reassess. And Jian? Precious asked. Yoon was quiet for a moment. That situation is being handled. She was taken to a private apartment. Clean, minimal, clearly maintained for exactly this kind of emergency. She showered. Changed into clothes someone had thought to have there in her size, which was both practical and deeply unsettling. She sat on the edge of the bed and called her mother. She didn't say anything about any of it. Just listened to her mother's voice, warm and unhurried, talking about the neighbor's new baby and whether the mango tree in the yard was finally going to fruit this season. Precious sat there with the phone pressed to her ear and felt herself held by the sound of it. The absolute ordinary miracle of a mother's voice talking about mangoes when the world outside has gone strange and sharp and full of things with edges. You sound tired, my love, her mother said. I'm okay, Mama. You always say that. Because I always am. Her mother made a sound that mothers make when they know their child is lying and have decided to allow it for now. Come home soon. Soon, Precious said. I promise. She lay back on the bed after the call and stared at the ceiling and thought about promises and costs and what Jian had said on the emptying office floor. What are you willing to lose? She was still thinking about it when her phone buzzed. Urgent. Message this time. The building is clear. CO Group operatives have been detained. Jian is with the authorities. It's over for tonight. She typed back. And tomorrow? The reply came quickly, which surprised her. He was not a quick reply man. Tomorrow is a different question. She stared at that for a long time. Then typed. Are you okay? The longest pause of the entire night. Longer than the car ride. Longer than the phone call. She watched the screen and waited and almost put the phone down 3 times. No one has asked me that in a very long time. She sat up slowly. Typed carefully, meaning every single word. Masking. She watched the screen. 1 minute. The delivered receipt sat there without converting to read. Then it turned to read. And nothing came back. She waited. The night deepened around her. She waited some more. And somewhere between waiting and exhaustion, her eyes closed. She woke to gray morning light and a notification from an unknown email address. Professional, formal, bearing the Kang Industries letterhead. She sat up and opened it with sleep-heavy hands and read it twice before it fully landed. Full-time position. Not an internship extension. A real role, senior level, the kind of title that took most people 5 years of climbing to reach. Salary that made her breath catch. Start date 3 weeks away. No cover letter request. No interview process. Just the offer, clean and complete. And at the very bottom of the document, Below the official signatures and legal language and all the formal architecture of a corporate offer. A single handwritten line, scanned in, slightly uneven in the way of a man more accustomed to giving orders than to writing things down by hand. You asked if I was okay. The answer is, better than I was yesterday. Come back when you're ready. There's no rush. J. She read the line 4 times. Then she set the phone down on the bed beside her and pressed both hands over her mouth and felt something move through her that was enormous and quiet and warm and terrifying all at once. This was not the ending of something. She understood that clearly, sitting in a safe house in a city that had turned out to be much larger and more dangerous than she had planned for, holding a job offer from a man who had crouched down in a hallway to hand her a file and never fully recovered from the decision. This was not the ending. But what happened next? What she said when she walked back through those doors, what he did when he saw her standing in that hallway again, what the CO group had already quietly set in motion that nobody in that building had discovered yet, that was a story for another day. And it was going to be worth the wait. If this story had you gripped from the first second to this very moment, then you already know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe to Afro-K Romance Fairy Tale, and turn on your notifications so you never miss the moment a new story drops. Share this with someone who deserves a good story today. And drop your city in the comments. I want to know exactly where in the world you watch this from. The next episode is coming. And trust me, you are not ready for what Precious finds out next.